Thanks for joining. Here with Justin, I want to introduce what we're going to be doing here on kind of a bi-weekly basis. This one, we're going to learn a little bit more about Justin, his background, how he got involved in GameSquare, the gaming industry and some other stuff. But going forward, we're going to cover, of course, the company as well as the industry. And I'd love anyone who has questions or things they want to see in future videos, please drop a comment below and we'll try and get it involved. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I know you're just chatting, warming up here in Toronto, but you're making me jealous over there in LA. But here, I guess to hop into it, gonna learn a little bit more about yourself. Do you want to kind of kick it off? Maybe start off with kind of if you went to school, first couple jobs, how you get involved in gaming, and we'll go through obviously kind of your
Yeah,
career.
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I'm Australian. I moved over to the States about 6.5 years ago. So it's actually feels like yesterday, but it's getting on now. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in the country. I actually was lucky enough to do a traineeship straight out of school. So I moved from the country, a small town called Echuca, up to the Big Smoke in Melbourne, and actually was accepted to do a traineeship at Ernst& Young, so a Big Four accounting firm, and it was really cool. So I was thrown into the deep end and learned a lot. The traineeship gave you exposure to, not just sort of accounting and audit and what's looked at as, I guess, the more boring parts of Big Four, but also, corporate finance, consulting, M&A, and sort of a really broad but interesting, on the work learning, I guess. And so I was doing that while also studying. So basically, how the traineeship worked is that they would kind of put you through, you'd work full time and then you'd do sort of night classes, but they would kind of put you through university. So I was really lucky to get that, and kind of puts you a bit ahead of the curve because you actually finish university instead of 3 years, you finish it in 4 years because you do some part time. But when you finish, you've got 4 years of work experience at a Big Four firm. So that was great. I did that and did my CA, and kind of got to the point after, I was only 23, but I'd been working for 6 years, and was starting to get to a reasonably senior role within, at a management level within Big Four, and, got really good grounding and really great learnings, but sort of decided that accounting and tax and audit weren't really for me, and actually moved over to Goldman Sachs at the time. My managing partner at Deloitte, I moved from Ernst & Young to Deloitte, but my managing partner at Deloitte was a client of the private wealth group at Goldman's, JB Weir, Goldman Sachs, and so I moved over there. Had I think about a year and a half working at Goldman's, which was great. For me, starting to learn more about, local markets, US markets, foreign currency, and did a lot of research, and it was really interesting learnings. Market hit a pretty rough spot, and I sort of decided that great learnings, but I'd done enough sort of study and technical work that I didn't really want to work in an industry longer term that was dictated by, I guess, a lot of external factors, as well as, some of the factors you can control. But so I actually looked at the time to move into, I wanted to go and work within industry, in more sport, entertainment, something I was more interested in, but in a more sort of strategy role. And at the time, my background was a lot more around finance and accounting. So I was getting offers from really cool companies, but they weren't sort of the roles that I wanted. So I actually moved from Melbourne to Sydney and took a strategy consulting role, which was great, and what I really think I needed from a commercial standpoint. And I went from that to actually running a strategy group for one of the Big Four banks in Australia. So, a bit of a varied kind of background. I, at that point, moved over to LA and actually started working at an experiential agency. And I was running finance and strategy there, which was super interesting. I had a year there and was poached by a production company and called Madison and Vine, and they were working on some really interesting stuff, which actually translates a lot into sort of the gaming industry and where I think, some of the strong suits of gaming in terms of production and content. But yeah, I was at Madison and Vine for a year and a half. I was sort of building out their models and decks and building some infrastructure within the business, helping the CEO kind of go to market to raise money. And at that time was when I made my first sort of entrance into the gaming world. I was introduced to the guys at FaZe Clan, and I think this was probably about 4.5 years ago. FaZe Clan are now the biggest lifestyle gaming brand in the world, bar none. They have an enormous social following, and I think they're listed at number 3 on the Forbes most valued list at sort of a tick over 300 million currently, and continuing to grow. But so I was introduced to guys at FaZe. I was chatting with them for sort of 6 months or so. I wasn't looking to leave my role that I was in, but just learning more and more about the gaming industry, how it was evolving, and not only the evolution of the industry, but also FaZe Clan was a really interesting one because they had built a brand and had a huge social following, but it wasn't a business. So what I found super interesting was, how do we turn this brand with so many eyeballs, into a really monetizable business? And that was super interesting. So I joined FaZe probably 3.5 years ago, roughly. Was the CFO at FaZe for 3 years, and over that time, grew FaZe Clan. When I started, there was eight guys working out of a house. There's now it's a global business now, well over 100 employees. Revenues in sort of the 2 to 3 million range. This year I think the trajectory is sort of north of 60 million. Raised 60 million of debt and equity over that time, and I think most importantly, I think we really paved the way in relation to being at this new intersection of pop culture, and really opening up and paving the way in terms of large scale commercial deals, collaborations, and crossover into traditional sport and entertainment.
Well, yeah. Wow, incredible background. Going through accounting to gaming. It's funny. You talk about gaming too, and hey, converting what's a well followed brand into business generating revenue. Extremely interesting. I know there's going to be tons of questions, and I was actually scrolling through a few even before we did this first video, and I saw people asking questions. How did you make FaZe work compared to, and someone gives the example of Rick Fox when he was doing Echo Fox, and
Yeah.
Mark Cuban and other people that say, hey, gaming is one of the worst investments because there's just so much passion and emotion behind it. Curious, anything to mention there? Obviously differences in some businesses, you say biggest following, bar none, and I think a lot of people would agree. Anything you want to kind of touch on those points? I thought they were pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think they're really interesting points. So FaZe, the 4 founders at FaZe, were kids at the time. They're not kids anymore. I mean, this is FaZe's 10th year as a brand. I'd say really formally as a business, it's sort of 4 years. But these kids, they were cool kids. They were gamers, and they created really interesting, captivating content out of a house in New York City. As any good businesses do, start out of a house or a garage or a bedroom. But they built a really, really cool brand. And it's interesting, people ask why FaZe has such a big following and why it was able to sort of, step ahead of the game. And I think it really is these 4 guys from a brand perspective. They really came out and said, we're gamers, it's cool, and it's okay to be a gamer. And they changed the stigma, I think, and they were the first guys to really do so. And a lot of kids were like, oh yeah, I'm a gamer. And like, it was sort of this like coming out party where people were no longer ashamed to be a gamer, and really helped, cross over with athletes and celebrities and people that are all gamers, and really, propelled the brand. That was one part of it. The second part of it is the business part. And I think, FaZe has some really smart people, and even more so today than ever before, right? As businesses grow and evolve, they build out their leadership team, and I think that's sort of this is kind of 2 parts. So to your passion question, I think that's really interesting. Is for me, I'm actually not a gamer. I mean, I used to play Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt and things like that when I was a kid, and very, very casual gamer. So, I played Australian football growing up, and tennis and cricket and a lot of more traditional sports. And for me, I was able to take the emotion and passion and biased views out of it and look at this, step back and look at this and say, okay, cool. Well, this is the new form of entertainment. The industry's huge. There's a lot of dollars being invested in the space. There's a lot of eyeballs, but how do we actually monetize this space? And I still think there are a lot of question marks around that. And I think as we kind of dive in, whether it be in this chat or later on into GameSquare and my new role there, I think that's really our competitive advantage, is that we're really we placed ourselves in the part of this industry that's monetizable, that's profitable. And I think that's going to, as this industry starts to mature, I think that's really where you're going to have a competitive advantage. Is that right now, there's big valuations, there's companies that are bringing in a lot of revenue, but at some point you've got to show a trajectory to profitability. And I think we're well placed to do that.
Yeah, no, incredible points, and we will cover the business obviously in another video, and I think that was a great kind of phase segue there. I know we're gonna get a ton of questions. I'm sure you get a ton yourself, so I'm sure. Please, if you've got questions, I'm sure there'll be some phase battle stories to throw in here in the future. But now talk to me. So you're at phase for a few years. What makes you go, okay, I built something at phase. It's time to move on to my own thing, especially as not much of a gamer background. Of course, you're seeing the industry, you're working at a top, call it whatever, at a top, gaming company. How do you segue into GameSquare?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I get this question a lot. For me, Lee Trink, who's the CEO of FaZe, he and I have a great relationship and continue to, I catch up often with JC Hayes, who's now the COO of FaZe, and they've really built out a world-class sort of executive and management team, which I do think is still kind of missing in this space. I think we're starting to get there. That FaZe has some really great people, and I'm still in contact with them, and still a shareholder and a very big supporter of FaZe. For me, it was really about my sort of personal journey and development. It's kind of going back to the sort of the university into Big Four point, that for me, my role as CFO of FaZe Clan was pretty commercial. I was in charge of our fundraise, and we raised close to 60 million in debt and equity. And really did a lot of commercial deals, was involved with bringing in talent. Ben Simmons, for example, is a fellow Australian, and a number of other commercial deals. So it was a really commercial role. I think the next stage for FaZe Clan, is really sort of, okay, cool, professionalizing the business, and now how do we get to some form of liquidity event, whatever that looks like. Whatever that looks like for a CFO, really starts to direct you into concentrating much more around financial reporting requirements. And if they do go the publicly listed route, I think your passion for that role needs to become much more technical. And for me personally, I really had no desire to be a CFO of a publicly listed company. My passion really is in operations strategy, growing a company and building that out. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to the guys at GameSquare at the end of last year, and sort of helped out in an advisory capacity, and then was announced as CEO earlier this year. Kevin Wright, who's the president at GameSquare, he and I really clicked straight away on the way we see the world and how we monetize this industry. Very different company to FaZe. I mean, both in the gaming industry, but GameSquare is publicly listed and is sort of the parent company of really building out these agency digital marketing media verticals where you can really monetize gaming. FaZe Clan is a brand, and the biggest brand, within gaming, but different businesses. And for me, this was just really an opportunity to take what I've learned from FaZe and apply those skills in a way that really suits my background a lot more. Operations strategy, growing a business, but also having the ability to look at M&A opportunities and to grow and scale really quickly. FaZe is a different beast. Not many are in the position FaZe are, right? And that is, you have such an amazing brand, but with that, you need to protect that brand equity to a point. So it's more organic growth, definitely at this stage. Whereas, GameSquare, I think we're really well positioned to grow and scale the business quickly. So for me, it just made a lot of sense. There's a next challenge, gave me the opportunity to utilize my skills and background, in the best way possible.
Yeah, no, awesome. Hey, I love the journey, love the storytelling. You're doing fantastic. Really, my last question for you is, as I guess call it the newer CEO, what does your day to day, week to week look like at GameSquare? You talk a lot about scaling acquisitions. Is that the majority of your time, or what else is kind of incorporated in of course, being the CEO of a public company?
A lot, yeah. It's been great. It's been a learning curve, but I have, not only on our board, but also our advisory board and, our investor and banking relationships, really amazing people. We're very, very lucky and fortunate. We, really supported by, people with uh, a lot of experience, and it's been great to learn from those types of people in terms of expectations, where to spend time. And, for me, it's a number of things, right? So, this isn't just an M&A play. I mean, within our portfolio at the moment, we have 4 assets. Within those, we have two major sort of agency assets. One on the talent influencer side in the UK, and one on the brand side in LA. And we're extremely bullish about the organic growth and that we'll get from those companies, but they need capital to scale. So one part of it is fundraising and getting these companies well capitalized. Another part of it is M&A, as we talked about, so diligence on calls with a number of different really interesting companies in the private company space within this industry, of which there are many, and it really puts us at a competitive advantage, because from a public company standpoint, it's pretty early days, so we're pretty well placed being in the public markets, I think, to bring in really smart private company assets that fit well into our group, that we can get capitalized, that we can offer some liquidity to, and we can make multiples on in the public market. So a lot of M&A diligence work, along with IR, right? I think being a CEO of a publicly listed company, you're doing a lot of IR and marketing and ensuring that not only you assisting in bringing investors into the company, but you're bringing in the right investors, and that's people that are in it for the long haul. This is not a short play by any means. People talk about the growth of the gaming industry, and that's real, right? You can look at the numbers, it's real, but it's here to stay. Like, this isn't a flash in the pan. Gaming is the new form of entertainment, and it's such early days. So we're extremely bullish about the future, not only of the industry, but our company and how well placed we are.
Yeah, wow, incredible. And we'll do an industry chat because I would love to see what you've been seeing over the past few years. And it's sometimes interesting to talk. Lots of gamers out there, lots of gamers that are going to watch this for sure. But giving them kind of the past business experience, what you've seen in the industry, how it's grown from a capital side, would be extremely interesting. So looking forward to doing that. But this was an awesome first video. Justin, thanks so much for joining. Last chance, anything about yourself you wanted to share with people?
No, I don't think there's anything specific. I mean, incredibly excited about the growth of the industry, as we talked about, and we'll jump into that a little further. But, my background has been pretty varied, coming from playing traditional sport, having quite a varied background in terms of finance, accounting, corporate finance, consulting, strategy. But I love how well positioned we are. I love the crossover that we have within gaming now to traditional forms of entertainment, music, and sport, and I think we'll continue to see that. And GameSquare is really well placed at the sort of intersection of all of that. I think you'll see some really exciting things to come from GameSquare with, talent and athletes and celebrities, and really well placed, and really excited about some cool projects we're working on.
Yeah, well, some good things to come, some good teasers for anyone who made it to the end of the video as well. So Justin, thanks so much. This is a great first video. Looking forward to talking again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.